Hello, everyone. I will talk about accessibility for React apps in the blind world, how the blind users experience to use the apps. And yeah, there's a TED Talk, the book that says that the purpose of the TED Talk is to change the people's minds once they had the presentation. And this is not a TED Talk, but I'll try to change your minds a little bit and to make you start to realize how important it is to deal with accessibility, how can be easier, sometimes depend of the complexity of the app, but how you should care about and how you after here you start to realize that, okay, I need to do this, I need to take action upon it, because usually you just know about it, but we not actually do in your day in the development cycle. Just to start this and to understand that, how many of you test with the voiceover activated? But yeah, so this should be like advanced talk, but as almost no one do this in your daily lives, I will cover like from the basic to advanced in this next. But why me? Yeah, I'm from Brazil. I'm developed for 20 years. Yeah, since 17, and now I have 37. So yeah, 20 years. And I'm living in Denmark for 3 years. I've been working in Brazil in global.com. That is a news published portal, and then I published the book Mobile First Bootstrap, that I've been involved in with like mobile development, and then I moved to React Native there, but was the time that React Native was the first versions. So then I moved to Denmark and started to work on Tradeshift and with different complete thing, but then I started to work with React, and then Trustpilot with vanilla JavaScript, and then Danske Bank. That is the bank from Denmark that I'm currently working. And I have some open source projects as well. Since the beginning of my career, I started to write in blogs, so you can check out my blog. I have some more Portuguese things, but has English articles as well. I have this project called GitPay that is like a bounty platform to reward developers. I will be talking about this on the stage today, open source. And I make a library, react.js generator, to generate action and reducers. I have IoT project called Aorta to help to build the prototypes to check humidity of the plants. I'm really like a garden lover, so that's a really cool project to experience of IoT. And Material Sense is a template with you build it React for Material UI. There's a lot of people using. It's a good way to start to learn React. By using this project as template. And my free time, I'm a musician as well. There's not much free time, as you can see. There's a lot of projects, but I'm not that how many songs as Beatles, but I have some projects with music as well. So Danske Bank is a big bank in Scandinavia. They have branches in a lot of countries: Estonia, Sweden, Norway, UK. So we need to support a lot of markets. In Copenhagen office, we have this beautiful, this is really close to the Danske Bank, so this is a really beautiful day view. And there's some normal things that happen during the work, going to work, so it was really cool. Like this is just another day in Copenhagen, like a jet fight without wings crossing the streets. So this is my normal day. The Danske Bank is really famous because of this app. That's a really cool app, used a lot in Denmark. If you buy a hot dog, you're going to use this app to pay. You just have a number, you can scan with QR code, and the customers and business can use it to make like instant payments. That's why like Danske Bank start to be more like a fintech company to make this kind of products and solutions. But today, the accessibility that we're going to cover is in a mobile bank 3 app that is, or like internet banking, that we should support, that start to have this requirement to support accessibility. And if the bank don't start to ask about that, I will never like, okay, let's start to do it by real accessibility. So this was like a business requirement that we're going to understand here how it's important. This is the app. It's a simple internet banking that you can log in, you can see your accounts, and now, in these days, it's possible to you connect to external banks you have like the open banking and PSD2 compliance that now you can add banks from another accounts in your app. So this make like a really competitive apps being released that now you're not obligated to use your app from your bank. You can use back from another bank. So we start to get more complexity into our mobile bank apps, and then you start to make these questions. Okay, on our app, how are we going to cover accessibility? This is the first step. You start to see how it's working now. So you start to activate your voiceover and start to test it to see what is happening, and start to make like basic questions like users can log in, users can check their accounts and balance. What I mean users is the user with disabilities. And here I'm covering most blind users, but there's different levels of disabilities. Like you need to increase the font size because the user have eye issue, but he's not like, he can see, but he needs like bigger fonts, but he is like a user with complete disability. User can change the settings, so he can change his passwords. They are able to make transfer between accounts. So we start to make this question, we start to test the app, and we realize that the users could not, or for some tasks, they have a really extra effort to actually do this. So this is really something that you need to worry about. How a blind user cannot take care of his money. He had to ask his children or someone else to do for himself. This is not acceptable, especially for a bank to not cover accessibility. So this topic here is already advanced because accessibility is advanced compatibility of the device. You need to activate something extra. So I will cover here from the basics, but the basic is already advanced. If you start to do the basic, it's already something. And so I'll cover how many blind users we have today, like in the markets, it's a market size. The accessibility starts from the web, and then we move it to React Native. About the design decisions, that is not related to React Native. It's about like how you deal with like the offline presentation that we have before. How it's the usability decisions that you can affect and make the accessibility easier. Not just like make a version for accessible people, but make this as part of the design process. The test of real users, that is really important. So the basic functionality, what you need to do, like your homework to make start to have your app accessible, and a little bit of advanced things that you can get a step further to improve the experience. There's security issues as well, and how to deal with animations and timeouts with this, and all of learnings from that you can use it to not have the same mistakes and to make easier to implement in your apps. So accessibility starts from the web. We start to have like apps with that they have font variants, screen size, and they have meaningful labels and images that the blind people can actually, if he cannot see the image, he know what the image is about, so he can do this. This is really common in government websites that they have to do this, so you can have this example of more like an accessible website. You describe everything in your HTML, the semantic, and then you provide this for the people on the screen reader. They are able to use it and do everything. Form, for example, that is really complex thing that he can like fill forms and sign up for service. This is really important. And we start that movement about progressive enhancement, that is build your app with depending of the compatibility of the device, and then you progressive giving more access to things like, for example, localization. You can actually activate, if you don't have localization activated, how the app should handle this. So we start to have this movement. Progressive enhancement start from the basic, from HTML, and then add layers of behavior that is JavaScript, layers of presentational like styles, and graceful degradations make, they wanted to work with everything, like the full compatibilities, and then they degrade, like offline, for example, is a thing that is a degradation of the app, so how should behave on this? So we start to have this movement that was really related to the accessibility for web. But actually, start with accessibility for React Native was something like that. We started something that was really simple. Okay, let's do it. And then like you start to fix some bugs, and then you start to have a lot of complaint of users, and we realize that there are people, blind people using it actually. And then we start to see that the people was really using and passionate about, and they have a lot of opinions. So when we start to fix things and make the app better for blind people, we start to get a lot of bugs. So it's not just like a simple thing. It's something that have a lot of issues that I try to cover here. Another dilemma, it's we are programming, we don't want to do like cool stuff, we want to do cool code, and there's a lot of things that the business requirements just want to make it work, and then we start to think, okay, but to make this work, I have to do like a lot of extra code, and we have the accessibility API to do something more advanced, but we don't want to use it because you're going to add more complexity in your app, but you need to do this to support. So we start to get this dilemma, and but nobody cares. On the end, if you're like product-driven, you need to make it work, and sometimes you need to do something that, yeah, sometimes I will show here some code that I'm not proud of, but I had to do it. So that's our dilemma. We have 200 million of people with some degree of disability. And a lot of people ask, okay, accessibility is just about the how many users you have. It's more like a civil duty. It's more like something that you have to do. It doesn't matter how many users going to use your app. And these users is really valuable because they're going to love you if you do something accessible, because they already experience they're really frustrated about the app. If you activate your voiceover and you start to use the apps, you're going to see how can be suffer. So it's a lot about design decisions. You can make a lot of the things easier if you do the smart decision on design, not thinking about accessibility. But if you have a simple app, if you have a simple interface, it's going to be easy to implement accessibility. You don't need to go a lot, you don't need to go beyond to do most of the basic. So you need to make part of the process. A good accessible experience would be, a bad one would be the users can reach the buttons. They can find the place using the gestures. I will show like the basic gestures from iOS, or from the apps. And the voiceover don't give meaningful feedbacks, so we got lost on the app because you don't know what is happening, and the behavior of the elements is not consistent with the iOS. The iOS already have the capability to deal with accessibility activated. So if you use, for example, a keyboard that is native keyboard, you're going to take advantage. You don't have to worry about the iOS do this for you. But if you create your own keyboard, your own experience, you need to handle everything, and then you try to emulate the behavior of the OS because that's what the user expected. So if the user interface is like a joke, if you have to explain, it's not that good. So this applies for this. If you make something really simple, the user can use it. It's not just the user that have disabilities. Any user can do it, and the people with disability are going to take advantage of your version that is not prepared for them. So you need to think a lot that if you bring complexity, the complexity is going to affect the accessibility as well. Test with the real users and real device. This is really important. And understand how they navigate. We make a test with one blind users to have this understanding. It's hard to keep this as a part of process. Every time you have to recruit some people with disability, but once you do you're going to understand how they navigate. For example, they have a lot navigate based on lists. You can see one of the basic gestures is 3 fingers, so they use 3 fingers to scroll, and they use 1 finger to swipe and 1 finger to to slide on the screen to highlight the places that is important. And they use Bluetooth keyboards. There's some special accessible keyboards that sometimes bring issues that you have to make something in your app to adapt. So you have to be aware of that. That is really common for them, and make their life easier. For iOS, for you on the development cycle, you need accessibility tools on iOS that you can just activate, And but it's not good. It's like inspector that you check if there's accessibility labels or not, but you're not actually listing the voice. In Android, you can just like drag a file and an Android emulator and then activate TalkBack and then start to work it, and then you can test it. But yeah, on iOS you need to test on the real device. But anyway, on the end, it's always good to have the feeling and actually activate on the real device. To cover the basics, we need the accessible true on a view, or if you have like a touchable element, they are already accessible by default. This is one of our screens. For example, if you define a label, they're gonna say what is in the label, this accessibility label. If you don't define, they're gonna say what is the element name. But you can define accessibility role to like say that there's a heading, so they're gonna say the title, heading, and list button, so you know what that element is going to do. If you say there is a button, you know that you double tap and you can continue. So the accessibility role is really good for you to define like what is button, what is heading, and actually they have a thing that on the test we discover that they can activate just highlight the headers, and then they're just gonna say all the headers. So this can make the life really easy. And accessibility info is the API that we use to do more advanced stuff that I'll show a little bit here. So the labels basically is that, oh, it's that dark, right? Yeah, not accessible. So, but here basically it's like, this is on the accessibility guidelines of React, so it's there on this documentation. It's just like if you define accessibility label, they're gonna say what is an accessibility label. If you don't define, they're gonna say what is the text of the element. And the role is the same. You define an accessibility role like button, and then you're going to say that this is a button. If it's a button, you can actually double tap, so you know about it a little more. And you can have more control on the elements when you start to, okay, I will make this first element not accessible, but I'll make the internal views accessible. So start to play around with accessibility labels to define the flow. Here is one example of the account. That you, for example, this big card is not accessible, but the accounts inside is accessible. So you can actually go to elements inside. Just with little changes, we make the life easier because now they can access their accounts. So, and then they navigate through slides, so it's gonna jump to the right place once you do this. And for advanced stuff, you had like things to improve the experience, that to figure out that sometimes the accessibility label and this role and everything is not enough. You need to do more. There's the security issues. Doesn't seem related, but the user can, not the user, a malicious app can actually have your password from accessibility. And the animations timeout that it's good to use for advanced case that you have to worry about when you deal with focus on elements that you need on the screen. But first of all, when you test it, you need to disable the yellow box of warnings, because they're going to start to say aloud all the warnings, and you're going to start to have nightmares, believe me. So disable this so you can have like a real feel how the apps behave with accessibility. This is an example of two screens, one with voiceover turning on. Here we have to use accessibility to detect that it's activated. So we show the delete button, and we highlight the server's code so the user know once they are on the login page that they have to type his password. And this delete button doesn't show on the first screen. They start to show once you type it. But for blind users, we figure out testing that he explore the interface before they take a decision. So he had to know that there's a delete there. If the delete appears after, he's going to be confused. So in this case, there's a little like sample code that you just like, this is on the documentation. It's really easy to find there. Here's most about what you have to think about in case that to implement is a state of the component, say that screen reader is not enabled, and then you use on the component mount event listening that detects if you change this configuration of a screen reader. If it's enabled, you just set the state. If not enabled, just disable the state. And the component unmount, you have like to remove the event. For this case of the password label, I show here that we have this password, and we change accessibility label in a smart way that now we just not say that for the normal user that you're gonna say like type your password, but we just like listen to the events to say, okay, you type in 1 of 4 characters. So this is a good thing that you can do to improve this this experience. And see, this is like a simple thing. It's just like a matter of design decisions and things that you can do in this kind of navigation. Another issue is with like dialogues and elements that need to be focused, because once you provide accessibility labels, you cannot have control of which element is going to be highlighted. So here's the example of a dialogue that needs to be highlighted, but if the dialogue has an overlay, sometimes they can block and they can highlight a thing that is behind. So you're going to lose total control of your accessibility, because the user is going to be feel lose it. And here in this case, you had to use like a timeout. So we use accessibility label to set a focus on a tag, and then this timeout to make sure that they're going to highlight after the timeout. But can be really dangerous, because if you give a high, like a 2 seconds timeout, the user can start to do another thing, and then the highlight is gonna back to that field. So you have to take care about to use this, but we need to use it, and we need to make a lot of check. It's not a beautiful code, but it's necessary, because otherwise, I will show here, you have to like sometimes to check if it's Android, to use a accessibility event. This is on the documentation as well, so we need to use it to set a focus, a lot of extra code. But if you don't do this, don't handle like if the tag is there, if you don't handle the timeout, a crash can happen. Yeah, you are just doing accessibility, and you are like happy to help everyone, but your app have like 2,000 crashes because of accessibility. Because if you use the focus, if they try to focus on an element that is not there, the app is gonna crash on Android. So here we use like the TPA, the Preferred App is a startup in Denmark that we like monitor the app crashing, and then we can have just like with simple things with accessibility we can crash. So we need to handle a little bit more, like when a component timeout, please clear the timeout, or if you a best approach that we found that we can use in most of cases is to take advantage of animation. Instead to use the timeout, why not just like get the animation? For example, here there's a case that you are navigating on lists. This is our like library component. So you like trying, I'm an emulator, so the user like would be something like this. And then, for example, they don't highlight the title. But if we do something like this, like listen to the animation, when animation ended, please focus on the place that I wanted. So you can take advantage of that, because if you try to focus where the animation is happening, they got lost where should actually focus. So you have to have all this control, to have control of, okay, the animation ended, now I can focus on that place. So you need to do this and to handle. So this brings a lot of complexity, but you need to if you wanted to make this improved experience, is something that you need to do. Another example here, it's I'm taking advantage of the animation to change the service code, because we have a screen here that we need to change screens with animation, and I take advantage. You can see that it's take a long time to go to the place that you want, and when you are accessibility enabled. And for example, I wanted to change here the service code, and okay, they're gonna like highlight. The screen changed, but because I take advantage of the animation, I wait for the animation finish, and then I highlight the next thing. So the screen is changed, and I keep focus on the place. And for users, it's really good, because they change it, and they already know what to do after. So the main action is always highlighted. So this is a really good improvement on the experience. The security issues, there's the overlay attacks in Cloak Dagger. Basically, the user that have access to accessibility, they can access like passwords, because they have to dictate the labels and everything that you are on input. They are like they have access. So some apps request for access to the accessibility features, and they can take advantage of that to actually get everything from you and steal your password. And then after this, they can like activate your PIN and then do a lot of things without you be aware of. So this is more like security issues from Android, but this happens. So just to be aware that that this can happen. For example, on a password, we need to handle it as properly. On the OS, they don't say the password that you are like that you are like making double tap. So this kind of things you need to handle. And so what we learn from that, from all of this, what you can do to really start and to get this learning that we have working like I think 4 months already, working just like being dedicated to accessibility. You have to use accessibility label props to provide the basic functionality. This is really important. You don't need sometimes to go further. You just have to use wisely and make the best decision to give the best message for the user, see where it's necessary to make a custom message, or cases that you just need the element name. Use the API to have the control of this flow, so we can know of where to focus, the main actions need to be focused. For example, if you're entering the new screen, the back button should be available for you return, and to make the user make the things in one step, but sometimes you need to explore, but you can control the flow a little bit with that. There's no like tab index in the app environment. You need to handle the accessibility event and timeouts to avoid crashes. So you don't want to like to start to do accessibility and then start to make crashes on the app for other users that is not with accessibility enabled. So you need to handle everything. You need to check if accessibility is enabled, and if you use these timeouts, you need to actually remove them properly to not to avoid these crashes, and start to think accessibility as part of the design process. So every time that you are planning a new screen, a new design, you have, okay, how are you going to deal in the case with the screen readers enabled? And sometimes it's just a matter, okay, let's leave as it is because it's good, and or make tests, or actually give like a special message or improvement in this case. So it had to be part of design process. In our case, it was something like, okay, we have an app, now we have to start to support. If you can support from the beginning, it's going to be easier to not make like codes like this. And take advantage of native elements. If you have native elements, you can actually do all the things that you needed the OS do for you. You don't have to worry about. So take advantage of that when you design. It's part of design process, because in design process, if you decide to use native elements, you don't need to use any extra code for provide accessibility. So. Yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoy it. If you have questions, you can reach out to me on my channels, and yeah, I'll be here during all the event if you want to discuss a little more about it. Then, thank you for being here.